Okay, more now on this breaking news. The nation's medical regulator, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, has approved Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for use in Australia. Political reporter Steph Dalzell joins us now from Parliament House in Canberra. And Steph, just before we get to you, I mentioned that we're expecting the Prime Minister's going to step up probably within the next few minutes, so we'll cut out of this chat as soon as he does step up. So take us through what's happened.
So, Joe, the nation's medical regulator, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, has granted the Pfizer jab provisional approval. And what that means is that Pfizer effectively has 2 years where the vaccine can be legally supplied before it's, of course, reviewed. And the TGA will be continuing to review the jab as it is rolled out in Australia and internationally. Now, the TGA says this follows a thorough and independent review of Pfizer's submission. It's decided the vaccine meets the high safety, efficacy and quality standards required. Now, this is the first COVID-19 jab to be approved for use in Australia. The federal government has purchased 10 million doses of this vaccine, enough for 5 million Australians. And what's really interesting about this approval is that it's actually approved for Australians over the age of 16. Previously, phase 3 of the vaccine strategy said that Australians over the age of 18, or under the age of 18 rather, would be considered in that final stage. Now, Australians under the age of 16 will be considered in that final stage. So including 16 and 17-year-olds in this initial vaccination rollout. Now, questions were raised about the safety of Pfizer's vaccine last week after a small number of deaths were reported in Norway among elderly people who took the vaccine, but the TGA says Australians can be confident that its review process of this vaccine was rigorous and of the highest standard. And they had previously noted that those deaths occurred among those who were very frail, who potentially only had months or even weeks to live. Now, Pfizer's vaccine is an mRNA vaccine, which before this had never been successfully produced or distributed around the world. Australia's previously only made what are called protein-based vaccines like the AstraZeneca vaccine. So that's why the government's opted to purchase this vaccine as opposed to getting the formula to produce it, because at this stage it's unable to produce mRNA vaccines, although it has said that it's looking into that. An mRNA vaccine effectively gives the body, it comes with a DIY kit if you'd like. I'm simplifying it, I'm sure scientists are like, wah! But it comes with a DIY kit that basically gives your body the instructions as to how to mount an immune response. So this is major, this being approved, Joe.
Yeah, and so what's the plans with the rollout? And so, like, when is it likely the first people are going to be injected with the Pfizer vaccine? Is it the intention that it'll mainly be frontline and vulnerable people who get the Pfizer vaccine, and then when the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine comes through, that will be for the general population?
That's exactly right, Joe. So the government's consistently said that it's looking at starting to roll this vaccine out next month. You may have seen there was some confusion over what was happening due to supply issues internationally with Pfizer's vaccine. We've seen Italy threaten to sue Pfizer because it says that it's breached its contractual obligations because of limited supply in Europe. But we heard Greg Hunt say on Thursday that he'd spoken with Pfizer on Wednesday and that everything was still in place for Australians to get their vaccine next month. The Prime Minister the next day cast a little bit of doubt over that, but we heard the Treasurer Josh Frydenberg yesterday confirm that at this stage it looks like the vaccine will be rolling out next month. As you mentioned, high priority for the first stage, people on the front line. We also see, and I've got the phases in front of me, we've got quarantine and border workers, frontline healthcare workers, aged care and disability staff, and disability residents, although as we've heard from the government, there's no plans to make the vaccine mandatory. The next stage looks at elderly people aged over 70, although I know some 70-year-olds who would object to being called elderly, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people aged over 55, and then younger adults with underlying medical conditions, so those particularly vulnerable to the coronavirus. The next stage goes to other critical and high-risk workers, adults aged over 50, and then the phase 2B, the second last stage, is the balance of the adult population before we get to the final stage, which is children aged over 16. And as I mentioned, we were expecting the final stage to be children aged under 18, but now that's been revised to children aged under 16.